Thank you very much once again, each and every one. I believe that our first speaker is going to be Dr. Amir. Dr. Amir is going to talk to us about, he's going to introduce the Bosnia and Herzegovina, about the situation prior to the war, during the war, and the attitude or current attitude about the war. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So my first session is about 3 points. First one is about pre-war context, pre-war conditions. Second one is origins of the conflict, main causes for the conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina and ex-Yugoslavia. And finally, international response. So mainly I will speak about the time frame from late 1980s to 1995, when the second session is about Dayton Peace Agreement. So this is the time of Dayton Peace Agreement. So let me now first of all speak about pre-war conditions, and there are many things to be said, but I would like to highlight some important key points for you today. Well, first of all, we have to understand the constitutional order of Yugoslavia. So this is what is different between Bosnia and Syria. So Bosnia and Herzegovina was one of the 6 constituent units of federal Yugoslavia. So it was from 1945 to 1991, 1992, when dissolution of Yugoslavia happens. So I can say that the starting point between Bosnia and Syria is different. We were part of a federal state, and on the other side, Syria was a unitary state. So there was a starting point was very much different. I want you to understand this point. Second, very important point, I think it is important to highlight it today, that authoritarian communist authorities in Yugoslavia accepted democratic transition in late 80s, early 90s. So what does it mean? The political parties have been established freely. There were elections. Parties, they won elections, and then there was a peaceful transition of the government from authoritarian communist-led rule to democratic rule in Yugoslavia. But there is one very important point again. Those elections were held at the level of republics in Bosnia, in Slovenia, in Croatia, in Serbia, in Montenegro, and Macedonia. They were not held for the federal level. So maybe that was a mistake. Some people used to argue if elections were held first at the federal level, maybe the new federal authorities would be able to prevent dissolution of Yugoslavia. This was not the way forward. So elections were held at the level of republics, which were having some authorities. So this is also an important point. But very important thing to remember is that the authoritarian communist regime allowed peaceful democratic transition to take place in these countries. So we are talking about pre-war time. There is no war yet. So these parties that have been established in early 90s, some of them were associated with different ideologies, like liberalism, like nationalism, like socialism, social democracy. Some of them were ethnic-based political parties. So this was really diverse kind of, and many political parties have been created. So elections in Bosnia took place in 1991, and 3 major ethnic-based parties won this election, and they have created, this is Bosnian-led SDA, Serb-dominant SDS, and Croat-dominant HDZ. They won elections. Social Democrat, Liberals, and others, they have lost their elections, and these 3 nationally, ethnically based dominant parties, they created a coalition. This is still before the war, 1 year before the war. Even though they have, their common agenda was, let's fight communists, let's take the power, let's share the power. Once they have achieved those goals, then their agendas become something else. So I think this is the pre-war time, and I think these are the points that I would like to highlight. Maybe Ahmed can add something else later on. Now let me talk about the causes of the war. Well, there are, of course, many causes that we can list on, going on, and I would try to systematize my answer with three-level analysis. I would speak about domestic level causes, regional level causes, and international level causes. So I said that this ruling government in Bosnia in 1991 was multi-ethnic, multinational. There were three ethnically based political parties which used to have a common agenda to fight communists, to take the power. As they have completed this task, this goal, their priorities have changed. Their priorities become nationalistic priorities, national priorities, ethnic-based priorities. So Bosnian Muslims were the largest group within Bosnia and Herzegovina, around 45%, based on our census in 1991. Second largest group was the Serb national group, 33%, and the third largest group were Croats, Bosnian Croats, around 17%. So, this is the time when, and I will speak about this in a minute, when at the federal level there is already a discussion between leaders, Yugoslavian leaders, how this conflict, how this transition, what will happen with Yugoslavia? What is the future of it? Is it dissolution? Is it more centralized state? Is it confederation? Is it federal? What is the solution? So there are two parallel processes, but now I'm talking just about within Bosnia. So these political parties within Bosnia, they have different agendas. Like Bosnian Muslim, who were the majority, but not more than 50%, their agenda was, well, they were not against Yugoslavia as long as the whole Yugoslavia will survive. Their policy was, well, we would pursue independence policy only if one or two republics, other republics would decide eventually to break up. So this was their policy. Serb political parties, they associated themselves with survival of Yugoslavia, but I would say with survival of Greater Serbia. They do not care much about the solution of Slovenia or Croatia as long as the remaining part will stay together, where Serb would be a dominant national ethnic group, and they already have the dominant economy, dominant demography, they control the army and so on and so forth. And Croatian constituent group within Bosnia, they were not against independence of Bosnia because they knew that the leadership in Croatia was also favoring independence, so that they supported Bosnian independence too, but at the same time they were very much pro-Croatian. So what does it mean? It means that there are three opposite directions. So the EU was like trying to overcome all these issues, and they said, well, let's organize a referendum. So in order to overcome this situation, how we should overcome it within Bosnia, we organized a referendum on March 1st, 1992. This is just 2 months before the conflict. So 63% of the people, they went out and they voted, and 99.8% of them voted for the independence of Bosnia. So 99.8% of Bosnians, and I would say these are majority of Bosnian Muslims, majority of Bosnian Croats, and minority of Bosnian Serbs. They went out, they voted for the independence. And this referendum was not accepted, was not recognized by Bosnian Serbs, who organized their own national ethnically based referendum, and they decided, well, we are going to have our part within Bosnia, and we want to join this part to Serbia, and we want to create a greater Serbia. This was their agenda, and they had their own referendum. In the meantime, they created paramilitary, para-police, para-parliament, and they declared state of their own within state of Bosnia. So this is like 1-2 months before the war. Actually, January 9th, this is when they have their National Assembly, when they declared. So I would say the causes at the domestic level these opposite visions for the future of Bosnia, and it was also related to primordial nationalism within Serb ethnic group. Just to mobilize, just let me illustrate this primordial nationalism with one illustration. They have their, they moved around the bones of Saint Lazar. Saint Lazar was their king who defeated, Serbia has been defeated in Kosovo battle in 1389 against Ottomans. So this is when he was killed, 1389. And now we are talking about 1989, 600 years later. They take his bones and they move those bones around to mobilize Serb people around this nationalist agenda. And this is very primordial nationalistic approach. So this is one of the causes at the domestic level. Regional level, well, in parallel, you have negotiation between republics. How do we resolve the Yugoslavian crisis? What would happen with Yugoslavia? Federation, confederation, centralization, dissolution, so different views. Again, there were three major directions. One direction was favored by Croatia. Yes? Okay, thank you very much. So these new national leaders who have been elected as leaders in Slovenia, in Croatia, in Serbia, in Bosnia, in Montenegro, in Macedonia, they have several negotiation rounds moving from one place to another place to discuss the future of Yugoslavia. So there were different ideas on the table. But basically all these ideas can be divided into three main proposals. One idea was represented by Slovenia and Croatia, and they wanted, independence. They wanted Yugoslavia to break up. They were proposing, let's have 6 independent states. Let's have peaceful dissolution of Yugoslavia. So this was what they proposed, Slovenia and Croatia. On the other side, this is one pole. Second pole, on the opposite side, there was Serbia and Montenegro. They proposed like a centralized state. Not confederation, not even federation. Let's have more centralized state. Let's Yugoslavia survive. And of course, there is a reason and there is a logic why they want to have a centralized state. They control the army. They are more, demography-wise, and they dominate in Yugoslavia. So they want to have a centralized state. So in the middle, between these two poles, you have Bosnia and Macedonia, and you have our late president Alija Izetbegović, who represented Bosnia as a whole in those negotiations. So they proposed a compromised solution. They said, let's have something in between. Let's have a loose federation or maybe some sort of confederation. Let's stay together. But Bosnia and Northern Macedonia, today's name is Northern Macedonia, but at that time it was Macedonia. They were the weakest among the 6. The most powerful republics at the time were Serbia on one side and Croatia on the other side. Bosnia was a weaker party, and they rejected. These ideas were not acceptable. So they keep on discussing, and eventually they could not agree, and there was no solution. So there was no solution, and the war happened. So this is the regional level. And finally, international level. International level, I'm still puzzled with this. This is the time of the end of the Cold War. You have liberalism has won. The communism has been defeated as an ideology. The U.S. is at the peak of its power. They talk about unipolar moment. The West, collective West, has prevailed, and Bosnia is in the Southeast Europe, and Southeast Europe is not close to Russia. It's far from Russia, actually. So one would say, well, no one would dare to be aggressive, to make a genocide, to change the borders. By the way, there was Badinter Commission, International Badinter Commission, who said those borders between the republics are sovereign borders. They are. If there is a dissolution, these are the borders. You cannot change the borders. So, of course, this was not accepted by Serbia and Montenegro. So I was really puzzled. How Slobodan Milosevic, at the time leader in Serbia, how he dared to be aggressive, to first of all, there was a short war in Slovenia, then there was a little bit longer war in Croatia, and there was the longest war in Bosnia. How he dared, having this idea that Russia is weak, Russia is on its knees, and Russia is always like an ally of Serb, Slav to Slav, Orthodox to Orthodox. How he dared to confront American agenda, American vision for the region. And I was really puzzled how it happened at the time. Then this is my answer. I don't know is it relevant or not, but my idea of this puzzle is as follows. The collective West, the US in general, was preoccupied with Central and Eastern Europe. So they wanted to consolidate democratization process in Central and Eastern Europe. Remember, Central and Eastern Europe, these are the countries like Poland, like Lithuania, like Hungary, Czech, Bulgaria, Romania, who were part of the USSR sphere of influence. They were part of the Warsaw Pact. Yugoslavia was not. Yugoslavia was non-aligned. So they wanted to consolidate democratization in those areas first, and they neglected Southeast Europe. So they let Milosevic. We'll come back later. This was their logic. And they really came back later. They came back only after 3 years of the bloodbath. They came only after genocide in Srebrenica. So this is my understanding. As they consolidated in the mid-90s, those democratic regimes in Hungary, in Poland, in Lithuania, in those other Central and Eastern European countries, only then they focused on Southeast Europe, and only then they focused on Bosnia. So these like international level causes for the conflict. So summary of the origins and the causes of the conflict, I would say, first of all, spreading of primordial nationalism at the domestic level. I would say hegemonic aspirations of Serbia. Second cause, Serbia has hegemonic aspiration because it was the most powerful republic, and there is another comparative with Syria. They control the army. Yugoslav army, the fourth largest army in Europe at the time, was under their control. Most of the officers, generals, top echelon of the army were Serbs. It was under their control. So Slobodan Milosevic, when he made his calculation, what he is planning to do, what he is proposing, what he is going to do, he knew that the Yugoslav army is on his side. So this is another. These are the summary of the course. And my final third point is about international response. International response. First of all, you have to understand this point. It's very important for us. Bosnia and Herzegovina was officially recognized as an independent state by the UN. We became a UN member on May 22nd, 1992. So this is really important. International recognition is a key moment for us. And it happened, I would say, prior to the conflict. But that was the only thing that we are happy when it comes to the international response. Let me now speak about this international response, dividing this with like EU, UN, US, and Muslim majority states. So how each of these parties responded to the conflict in Bosnia. So let's first of all speak about the US. The US, generally speaking, supported the Bosnian cause. They supported Bosnian independence. They recognized us. They asked other countries to recognize Bosnia. At the same time, they were reluctant to intervene, to secure our independence, our sovereignty. But there are two stories I would like to share with you. First of all, just before the conflict, there were negotiations going on between three ethnic groups, but now mediated with the EU. And there was this negotiation round in Lisbon, Portugal. So the Alija Izetbegović, our late president, Radovan Karadžić, representing Serb political party, and there was this Croatian representative. They went to Lisbon under EU mediation to discuss the possible constitutional order. And they made some kind of compromise. So they signed this kind of agreement. It was not an agreement. This was maybe 2-page document, very loose document, but still there was some kind of compromise. When Alija Izetbegović came back to Sarajevo, he was called by U.S. Ambassador Zimmerman, who had his U.S. embassy was in Belgrade, and he told him, look, get out of this. Withdraw your signature. And he promised him something. We never know what was this discussion about. Because Alija Izetbegović, in his memoirs, he did not disclose details of that discussion. But we all know they met, and we all know that U.S. ambassador asked him to leave this compromise, and he promised him something. So this is one episode I want to illustrate how close we were with them and that we collaborated and we counted on it. The second very interesting illustration is that the US has tolerated Iranian aid to Bosnia. As you know, Iranians helped Bosnia a lot by sending weapons, by providing instructors. And this very interesting story, Bosnia was surrounded. It was under siege, so Iranians could never ever come inside unless they cross Croatia. So Iranians asked officially Croatian President Franjo Tuđman, okay, we want to send this military aid to Bosnia. Can you allow us the passage? And then Franjo Tuđman, he consulted himself with the Clinton administration.
And the percentage, of course, for Croats.
Yeah, they offered them like 30, maybe even more percentage of the weapons. And remember, at the same time, there was a war between Croatia and Serbia at the same time. So they told them, we will give you weapons as well. And Tuđman, of course, said, okay, let me see. And then his foreign minister spoke with the U.S. ambassador, asked him for approval. And then U.S. ambassador Galbraith, he wrote the memoirs about this chapter. He consulted with Clinton, and Clinton said, okay, let them pass this. So the U.S. at the time tolerated Iranian passage to Bosnia to send us weapons so that we can fight. One more very important highlight. Now, this is a UN reaction. There was a UN embargo imposed on ex-Yugoslavia, but this UN arms embargo actually affected only us. Why us? Because Yugoslavian army was already armed up to the teeth. They were very powerful, but the Bosnians were armless. So we needed weapons to defend ourselves. So this arms embargo imposed by the UN was affecting only us. So the Muslim majority states were like, with all these sessions that they organized to help us, they were like fighting with the UN. You have to remove that arms embargo. This is unjust. These people cannot defend themselves. So Americans, even though there was an UN embargo, they ignored this and they allowed Iranians to come in. So this is American reaction. But they did not intervene directly. Only 3 years later, and why 3 years later? Because one thing is this consolidation of the Central and Eastern Europe. Second, Clinton was very much interested for his re-election. And third, there was a genocide already happened in Srebrenica, and they knew. They were recording. They saw what happened. So these are the reasons why they said enough is enough, and all EU mediations have failed already. So they said enough is enough. Now we are taking over. We are making this intervention, and then we will send you a negotiator, Richard Holbrooke, which will mediate the peace. So this is the U.S. EU. Reaction of the EU. Well, I would say EU was divided, confused, weak. They initially mediated the conflict before the war, during the war. There were, I think, 3 peace proposals. All of them failed. We accepted all of them. One of these peace proposals was actually accepted by all parties, but then Radovan Karadzic, a Serb-led leader, when he came back, he said, well, I have to have a referendum on this proposal, or I have to have a national assembly, and then they voted no. So basically all EU proposals, peace proposals throughout the war have failed. So what EU did, they provided some aid, they were mediating unsuccessfully, and their member states were having different policies. For example, the UK and France were pro-Serbian, I would say. Germans were pro-Croatian or maybe pro-Bosnians. Maybe Italia was balanced. So there were different views. There was no EU policy. Now UN reaction from the UN? Well, there was this unjust UN arms embargo. This is one. There was a very weak UNPROFOR mission. There were some military UN blue helmets in Bosnia. They were supposed to protect the peace. They were UN safe havens. So you have a safe haven in Gorazde. You have a safe haven in Srebrenica. You have that Dutch battalion under UN in Srebrenica. They are supposed to protect those Muslims there. It was a UN Security Council resolution. And these people, the few thousand soldiers, armed, were there to protect these people. UN safe haven. And what happened when the Serb attacked Srebrenica? These soldiers, they ran away. And they overran safe haven. They killed more than 8,000 boys and men. And this was a genocide, as International Court of International for ICTY, ICJ. They have all have said that this is a genocide. And finally, Muslim majority states. Reaction from their side. Well, I would say that the Bosnia united Muslim majority states more. The cause for Bosnia was a cause for unification more than Palestine. On Palestine, you have different options, different visions, different ideas. You have Iran on one side, one-state solution. You have Saudi Arabia, two-state solution. You have different really options and ideas. But when it comes to Bosnia, they were on one side. And I would just illustrate this with one session of OIC. It was, I think, December 1992. Ali Akbar Velayati, foreign minister of Iran, and Prince Salman, current king, they were in a single room together asking our late President Ali Izetbegovic, okay, we are together. We want to help you. Tell us what we are supposed to do. They wrote many letters. For example, there was this declaration, very important declaration, OIC meeting. I forgot the place. But this was late 1992. So they drafted a declaration, and our late president was not happy with the draft. And he said, this is too weak. You have to be more powerful. And he spoke with Velayati and Prince Salman. And they said, no problem. We are going to help you. We'll push them around, all of them. So they went back to OIC session, and they said, we have to draft more powerful letter. So they drafted something that we were happy with. So this letter has been signed by Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, and they sent this letter to UN. And in this letter they said this is very important. They said, if you do not remove this arms embargo, we have the right, we Muslim majority states, to arms Bosnians to defend themselves. We have this right. This is what we will do. And the UN did not change this policy, did not change this arms embargo. So I would say after early 1993, you have Pakistan, you have Malaysia, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Iran, you have Turkey helping us with weapons, with instructors, with money. And even Americans tolerated, as I explained through the story of Iran. So that is what Muslim majority states. And in conclusion, this is, I think, the last point of my. In conclusion, I would say.
Because after that, we will open this question.
Yeah. International response has become more evident after the genocide in Srebrenica in July 1995. It came with increased involvement of the Clinton administration when he said enough is enough. International reaction was generally more evident as liberal institutional and rules-based order in Europe has consolidated itself. And I would say that international response has also changed with more direct American involvement to the crisis. As they played a pivotal role, we were able to finally reach out a settlement. And this is my second session. I will stop here and I open the floor for discussion. Thank you.